Origins of the universe. In your series, you said the quantum foam could be eternal.
Right.
And we know from Einstein, energy and matter are kind of the same thing and they're interchangeable, and maybe energy could be eternal. Now, I see this on a lot of popular shows. People will often say it doesn't make sense before the Big Bang to say that there was time or space or to talk about anything before the Big Bang. And since I've really studied up on this, I mean, that's only certain models of the Big Bang. The Big Bang more generally just means that the universe used to be very small, and we can, due to the expansion, cosmic microwave background, we can tell that it used to be very small, right? And it's expanded. It does not mean that everything started from there, although that's some models, like I think Stephen Hawking, and I think he later changed his mind about it. He was kind of working on an eternal universe, which I think most physicists believe the universe is eternal now, in some way or another. There's the classic Sean Carroll, William Lane Craig debate where Craig tried to say something about Alan Guth, who proposed inflation, and he tried to say that his model, I forget what it's called, the Lincoln model, I can't remember the name. It implied that the universe had a beginning and it could not be infinite in the past or something of that nature. He got Alan Guth on the screen and said, "No, I think the universe I suspect it's eternal." But anyway, that was funny, but classic.
Okay.
But
so
yeah,
he contradicted Craig. Craig said that he said it had a beginning, and then the guy specifically said it didn't. Right.
Yeah, Carroll got him on the screen, and he said, yeah, he corrected him. Like, I think it's eternal. Like, no. But anyway,
right.
That's really 10 years ago, but it's a classic.
It surprised me coming from, right. Well, I mean, part of the problem here too is that, like, either way you have an issue, right? So let's say that the universe, so let's say that the universe did have a beginning, and so that space and time come into existence when the Big Bang happens, right? If we say that, then that means that time begins when the universe begins, right? And so that means that by definition, nothing can come before the Big Bang, right?
Right.
Well, since causes must precede temporally their effects, if the Big Bang, if nothing happened before the Big Bang, then by definition, nothing could have caused it. It must have been a causeless thing. It must have been something that had no cause, right? And so, right, there's no need for a God if it couldn't literally have a cause, right? On the other hand, if it does make sense to think about what happened before the Big Bang, right, then the universe could be eternal, because you could have this eternal nothingness before it, or you could even have infinite number of universes that existed before it, right?
I mean, like, we could be spawned from a multiverse, could be a quantum fluctuation or something from a black hole. I think Lee Smolin proposed that the universe is kind of like an evolutionary cosmic. It's like kind of like cosmic evolution, and like I think black holes kind of birth universes type of thing, like the Janus-based universe, where we could be like going kind of like an hourglass, like there's a universe going the other direction from us, and there's kind of, I don't know if it's the big balance, because like Roger Penrose has the cyclical model where we go through cycles, right? Kind of like the Eastern mythological idea where there's eternal cycles, expansions, collapses, and progression. But also like I think it's called the Janus model, like the god Janus with two faces, or the big balance. I don't know if they're the same thing, but anyway, we have another universe going in the opposite direction kind of from us. Right. And so their time, for them, time is moving forward, but they're really backwards to us. And the Big Bang is kind of just a thing in the middle. So that's another possibility.
Right. And so it gets infinite directions, right? Yeah. And notice that, like, the multiverse this could happen in multiple ways, right? Like, so it could be that you have a kind of multidimensional thing where you have one universe, and then black holes in that universe spawn new universes in different dimensions, and then those universes have black holes, and you have this kind of branching view, right? But it'd be this kind of branching multiverse, and that's possible. We could just be one of the many branches, right? It's also the case that you could have the cyclical model, right, where you could have expansion and contraction. Recently, like for a long time, as I've taught this stuff, it looks like contraction wasn't an option, that we would just expand and go back into a complete vacuum. One of the podcasts I listened to, The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, was talking about some recent information, a recent study that suggests that maybe contraction might actually still be a possibility. So if that's the case, that, you know, that kind of oscillating universe, but we might also oscillate in the other ways, right? Like, so in other words, we might expand and everything goes back, and then we get back down to complete nothingness where everything decays and you have a complete vacuum again. And then you just have another vacuum fluctuation that happens in that great expanse of nothingness, and you get another universe that comes out of that that eventually decays back down into nothing. And then you could have another one, and that could go on infinitely into the past, you know, has been happening infinitely from the past and also into the future. So that's another possibility as well, right? Again, don't know which one is the case, right? But all of these are possible, and none of them require a god to cause it or in any way, right?
I just see it so often. The Big Bang talked about as if it means the beginning of everything, and that's not at all
necessarily the case.
Yeah. It is maybe a couple of different models, but it's not necessarily what it means. And again, most physicists they believe the universe is eternal in some fashion.
Say this and then we'll go on. Like, the other problem is that even if you grant that, right? Let's say that there's only one universe and the Big Bang was the beginning of it and da-da-da-da-da, right? Like, even if you say that, right? Invoking God as the explanation for that thing is not a good explanation. Right. So this is where inference to the best explanation is so handy here, right? Inference to the best explanation suggests that we should accept the explanation that is the most testable, fruitful, wide-scoping, simple, and conservative. The one that makes observable predictions, gets them right, that's fruitfulness. Scope is explanatory power. One of the things you have to have for scope is to not raise unanswerable questions. It has to be simple, it has to not interject extra entities, it has to be conservative, it has to align with what we already have good reason to believe. And the problem, and this is something that you can find in a really good paper by Ted Schick called Can God Explain Anything? Even if we think the Big Bang is the beginning, right, and it's the only universe that we get and blah, 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 invoking God as an explanation for the singularity that caused the Big Bang is not a good explanation because it is more complicated. It is a less good explanation than just the singularity itself, right?
People try to argue against that, but I don't think that works.
No, I mean, it can't, because like the singularity is almost as simple as anything can get, right? It is a single point governed by no laws, governed by no laws, and it is literally like everything into a single point. It almost by definition is as simple as you can get. And if you demand a cause for that, the only thing that would be simpler than the singularity itself would be nothingness, which would be the background foam, which would be the quantum foam, right? If you say, no, I don't think the quantum foam caused that, what I think caused it is an infinite being with infinite powers that I have no idea, no one can comprehend how that works and how those powers work. That's not a better explanation. The better explanation would just be the singularity happened for no reason, it just happened. Saying,
I think you're definitely multiplying entities unnecessarily there.
You're not only multiplying entities necessarily, but you're raising unanswerable questions about, well, how does this deity work? Where did he come from?
You're not solving anything.
And that makes
you're just transferring questions, right, to something more complex, as you said.
Exactly.
But when you talk about like the Kalam, you know, everything that begins to exist has a cause, blah, 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 doesn't mean God. And we don't know. I think every one of those premises comes into question. Like quantum physics, we have things that we don't seem to have apparent causes. Exactly. And even when you talk about cause, that David Hume pointed this out, like we can't necessarily like prove cause or like what it is, because we just see things proceed from each other. We can't prove cause, right? So it's more of not as much of a certain thing as it seems like it is to us.
Yeah. Any argument that talks about cause is going to run into Hume's problem of causation, right? But even if we ignore that, we get back to the same problem is, well, whatever you're going to invoke as the cause needs to be the best explanation, and invoking an infinite deity with infinite powers that we can't understand is never going to be a good explanation by definition.
We also have like conservation of momentum, which from what I've read, kind of, because of that, motion is the natural state of things, unless you have something like friction that slows things down. So you don't need a mover to make things move. You don't need a Aristotelian prime mover or whatever for that. So yeah, cause just doesn't necessarily apply to the universe itself or at the fundamental level. We don't have causes in quantum physics. You look at the fundamental laws of physics and they're time reversible. They don't There's not really cause there. There's just like patterns, basically, right? Quantum field theory, and there's no causes there. Like necessary being, there's no such thing as far as we know. Not necessarily any necessary being. When you talk about God, if there is a necessary thing, it could just be the universe. This again, you're just transferring things. Like, because if you say God created everything, obviously, where did God come from? It doesn't really answer anything. If you want to say God is, Carl Sagan said this on Cosmos, like, if you ask the next question, where did God come from? If you say God always existed, you could say the universe always existed. If you say we can't answer this, you can say the universe is not answerable. And you just, again, like you said, you're adding things to the picture that.
Yeah, right. So all the things that people say about God, that he's always there, he has no cause, he needs no explanation, da, da, da. We can just say the same things about the universe. And if they say, no, you can't, yeah, we can. You just said that about God, right? And the advantage that we have is but ours is simpler. Like, we're just saying that about the universe. You're adding an extra entity and then saying the same things about that extra entity. If you don't need the extra entity, just say it about the universe itself.
Foresight paradigm, fine. A foresight paradigm, foresight paradigm, you fine. A foresight paradigm, I fight for sight.